Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be starting in 2 minutes, so if you haven't already, please find a seat.
Good morning. I'm Will Zernchik, Executive Director of PANC. As the new Executive Director, I am honored to be here today. And I would like to thank everyone for joining us for the Parkinson Association of Northern California's 2021 Educational Conference, Navigating Parkinson's with a Warrior Attitude. We have an exciting program in store for you today. Not everyone who wanted to be here today could make it, so we're live streaming on Zoom to hundreds of others throughout the region. This will also be made available to you afterwards, just in case you miss something. I would also like to thank our loyal sponsors of the event. But before we get started, let's go through some housekeeping. First, we're following COVID safety protocols. Please wear your mask, continue to social distance, and wash your hands frequently. There are sanitizing stations nearby and hand sanitizers on each table. They were all donated at the grounds, so feel free to take them when you leave. PANC staff and board members may remind you to wear your mask properly. Please remember, this is for everyone's safety, so be kind to the messenger, because it may be me. Just a friendly reminder, silence your cell phones. If you need to take a call, step out into the foyer so others are not distracted. Bathrooms are located here in the general session, right there back behind the vendors, and also out in the foyer. Please notice the exit signs. Let's now take a moment and look around and see if we can identify the exit closest to you just in case. You'll find them back at to the stage right and around the facility, marked with green words or green letters saying exit. And did you see the conference bag this year? Let's give a big thank you to Supernus Pharmaceuticals for that. You're going to need it to hold all the information that you're going to get today. Let's see. So the conference program is also a great resource today and later. There are articles, the conference agenda, and information on the services that are provided to you. We have a packed program today, so please help us stay on schedule and be seated at the end of the scheduled breaks. If you have any questions, please go to the registration table out front or the PANC table located right behind the cameras. PANC will be taking pictures and videos throughout the event. We may use them on social media, our website, or in the Parkinson's path. If you do not want to be in a photo, just let the photographers know that you don't want to be in it, and we'll work around that. Lunch today will be 45 minutes long, and it'll be served at your table. Thank you to our med student volunteers from California North State University, California State University, Sacramento, and UC Davis. Also helping us today are volunteers from Roseville's High School Medical Club and various PANC supporters. Reminder, please use these 45 minutes to enjoy your lunch and visit our sponsors. Who likes games? We have one for you today where everyone can learn something, and some of you will win some pretty cool prizes. Take the exhibitor card. It looks just like this, and it was given to you when you arrived. What you do is you go to 4 tables in the room, 4 tables out of the room, so 8 tables in all, and have them sign your card. Once you have all 8 boxes filled up, that's 8 visits in all, take it to the PANC table, right again, behind the cameras, and you'll be entered into the drawing. Meanwhile, check out the great prizes, because we'll do the drawing at the end of the conference, and you need to be present in order to win. There's a Q&A session during the expert panel discussion. If you have a question that you would like to ask, please write it down on the index cards that are on your table. We'll be collecting the cards at lunch, we'll give them to the panel, and they'll try to answer as many questions as they can. Also, once we wrap up this year's event, we'll be sending out a survey by email. When you receive it, please complete it, and also make sure your comments are included, because the conference committee and I review each and every one of your replies. We want to improve your experience at the PANC conference for years to come. If you have any questions about anything I just went over, just ask a member of the PANC staff, board, or go to the PANC information table, again, located behind the cameras table. It is now with my pleasure to welcome PANC President of the Parkinson's Association of Northern California President, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sean Tracy.
Set me up, huh?
Yeah, great. And mask.
Good morning, PANC. Oh, come on. Good morning, PANC. Try again. Good morning, PANC. Awesome. Great to see you. If you could see what I see here now, you'd just be so inspired by all the people, all the tables are filled, and I know there are about 300 people out there on that video right now watching us, ready to have a great day of education, great day of fellowship, great day of learning, and great day of getting out again, getting connected, and being a part of the PANC community. We're so happy to have so many of you here, and I'm thrilled. And I want to thank Will Zernchik, our new executive director, because we looked for 9 months for just the right person. Will's here. He's in the office. He and Sharon are there every day. So if you need something, he's now your guy along with Sharon. So thanks for being here, Will. Really appreciate it. I want to say hi to all of you. I'll be coming around with big virtual hugs, but I also want to say hi to the folks on the line. I know there are about 300 of you out there, so high five, handshakes, virtual hugs. Thanks for being here. I know you're far and wide, different places, different circumstances, but it's so important that this gets to you and that you share with others, and this whole education conference becomes part of what we do as PANC. So today we continue building community through the journey. And remember, PANC is your neighbor. PANC is the community. PANC is who you can call any given time, and we're local, and we're here to help. We partner with the Parkinson Foundation, we partner with Michael J. Fox, we partner with PMDA, we partner with everybody, but we're here for you. So never forget that. Northern California, we're here for you. This year, we got an awesome speaker. I had a chance to meet Jimmy Choi. You're gonna love him. He is so full of energy, and you know what? He likes to do photos. He likes to meet people. He wants to hear your stories. So please, if you want a team picture, you want a group picture, wave him over and he'll come oblige you. He was really excited about doing that. The theme this week, this month, this year, navigating Parkinson's with a warrior attitude. And I think it's so important for us to realize, Jimmy's story is going to inspire you, but each of us has to be a warrior. As Dr. Kandar will tell you, we always have to take care of where we are. The doctors can help, the exercise can help, the nutrition can help, the sleep helps, the support groups really help. So I want to call out to all support group leaders or participants. Can I get a wave of hands? Let's see y'all out there. Who's out there? Thank you, a round of applause. All of you who did not wave, join. It really makes a difference. It's hard, it's uncomfortable at first, but I swear to you, it makes all the difference in the world to understand what you're going through, someone's been through. You're individual, you're unique, but somebody in those groups can help you. So please consider joining. They're virtual now, they're in person now, we're getting back together, so thanks so much for being a part of the groups. And the Parkinson's Association really is going to focus in 2022 on support groups, You know, frankly, in 2020 during the pandemic, these last 19 months, we've kind of lost contact with many of you, and we regret that, and we didn't know how to fix that. But with us coming out of this pandemic, and we're going to get out of this pandemic, we're going to get reconnected. We're going to be with you, and we want you to be part of what you need, and we want to help you get there. So those support groups, we established a new support group committee led by Dr. Lowe of our board, and we're really going to make an emphasis to get reconnected, find out what you need, and help you out, and make life through this journey even better. So I want to do a couple things. One, I want you really to meet the amazing Parkinson Association Northern California board members. These volunteers, all year long, working night and day to help you in many different ways. They've got such great talent and such great perspective. But why I say we're your neighbors is because if you ask a question, one of these 14 people can answer it. So I'm really honored to be part of their group and lead this group for the last 3 years. So I want to start with my vice president, my right-hand man, my left-hand man, my wingman, Myron Jansen. Come on up and say hi, wave, show them who you are. Myron, come on out. Don't be scared. Myron. All right. They like to play jokes on me, so they kind of, make me wait for these things. All right. Carolyn Loveridge is online. She's not able to be here today, but say hi to Carolyn. Everyone wave. Good to see Carolyn. She's our secretary, and she is the person who puts out our amazing newsletter and our communications, and she is really our representative for care partners. If you need guidance or help about being a care partner, call Carolyn. She's just phenomenal. I also want to introduce Dr. Egley. Dr. Eric Egley is our treasurer, and he is somebody who we talked into being our treasurer because he's a psychologist. So he said, I'm a psychologist, right? I'm not a finance guy, I'm not an admin guy, I'm not a budget guy. I said, you'll do fine. And he's done an amazing job in getting our books set, getting our accounts straight, and then putting the budget into places where you and I can have a conversation around how much money we've got, where our investments are at, and what our bank account looks like. So Dr. Egley, give a wave. And there's Myron at the end who was hiding from me. So say hi, Myron. Can you say hello to everybody? I mentioned Dr. Fred Lowe, and Dr. Lowe is newer to our board, but his passion for support groups and outreach to other associations has just taken off. And so maybe many of you probably already talked to Dr. Lowe, but he's here today. I want to say thanks to Dr. Lowe and say hello. So he's our new support group leader. I appreciate that. Christine Shea will do some power-up things for you right here. She's our physical therapist from Kaiser and works on our Parkinson Wise program and is really anything about physical therapy, Christine can help you there. So say hi, Christine. There's some fans over there, huh? Look at that. You've earned those fans. Dr. Matt Brown. So Matt's from CSUS Sacramento. He's a professor in kinesiology, which I love because it's all about exercise, balance, movement, everything else. And so Matt's new to our board, has been doing a great job with us on the rural outreach, the annual conference, and research. And he's the one, if you look at the PANC website, there is a study going on that Matt is sponsoring through the Parkinson Association. So thanks, Matt, for all you do. I have to inform you that our lawyer couldn't be here tonight, but Chris Chediak is our attorney on the board, and he is hopefully watching online. Chris will keep everything legal. Thank you for being here. Our newest board member is Jennifer Westaby. Jennifer comes to us from Grass Valley, and Jennifer is brand new, so she's going to come up and speak to you for a few minutes. Come on, Jennifer. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But Jennifer comes to us from Grass Valley, very interested in support groups and the rural outreach in Northern California, so welcome, and thank you for being here. So you're going to get a lot of round of applause for this one because this is a firecracker. This is our ambassador to the north. This is the one I had to get on a knee and please beg to be on the board. She's done it, and she's done an amazing job. So Kim Hawkins from the Reading Support Group. Kim, you want to say hi? Just a few fans. It's funny. Christine Grimoilis is online too. Christine's our Senior Care Solutions, Medicaid, Medicare, housing, care for services. She really is our expert and very available to help with that. Sharon Dinelli Wardy, we know Sharon from the office. Where's Sharon? Is she up here? Is she hiding? She's at the front desk. And Eric Jones. Eric Jones just ran a marathon in Chicago. He challenged us to join him, but we encouraged him and just gave him money to run. So Eric is here. And then if you saw the drone outside, young kids, they're just playing with toys. And so that was Eric's drone. And then our sage and our guide and our leader for this conference, Dr. Suketu Kandar, is here. And he's going to be talking with you later and leading out the conference once again. And don't worry, Suketu's already got plans for 2022, so you'll be hearing about those shortly. Did I miss anybody? Did I get everybody? Oh, Marcy Larkey, how could I forget? Oh, I would have been in trouble for that. So please turn and just look at all these exhibitors all the way around you, and if you came through there, the exhibitors in there, all of those folks are connected to Marcy. Marcy is a one-person dynamic, go get them to the conference, get them involved, leader for our association. So Marcy, this is all for you, and you've done it all, and thank you so much. So I really do, during the conference, stop these folks, talk with them a little bit if you have an interest in where they are and what they do. They are here for you, and I'm really honored to be part of your team, and thanks for letting me be part of this. And Will, he's our new guy. This is the guy who's going to be at the office and leading the way, and we're very grateful because for 9 months, we've been doing the work without him, so we're grateful he's here.
Thank you, Sean.
So a couple people I just want to acknowledge who may be online or maybe in the audience, past presidents. Nancy Kretz was our past president, and Larry Alvers was our past president. And I know Jim and Jerry Morris. This conference is the heart of their whole year. Don't tell too many people, but Jim's a Dodgers fan, and so he wanted to watch the game early. No, I'm just kidding. But he and Jerry are watching from home today, and so I want to say hi to Jim and Jerry. And then also want to acknowledge the entire medical advisory panel for Parkinson's, for the Parkinson's Association. This group is unique to the country. This group is a group of the 4 medical centers in Sacramento come together and talk about how to improve care for all of you. Talk about new treatments, talk about new research, talk about new ways to support people with Parkinson's, and that's led by Dr. Thakkar and Dr. Suketu Kandar. So thank you for all of that. So we've got a host of services. Folks of you have participated in PANC, we've got social media, we've got the newsletter, we've got the support groups, we've got this conference, we've got the annual conference walk. All of that takes money. So I was hoping what we could do is ask you for helping us make the reality by a Fund the Mission donation basket. So fundraise today will go to what we have is a respite program with the Caregiver Resource Centers. We've got them throughout Northern California, Redwoods, the Passages group, and the group in Central California for the Caregiver Resource Center, Del Oro. So Del Oro and Passages and Passages and Redwoods are all available to anyone in Northern California for respite. $600 grants for families. If you need a break, you need someone to care for a loved one, this grant goes to you. Simple application process. It really works. When people come back to us, they say, thank you for that time. I needed that break. I need a little distance. It's much better now. So I want to acknowledge all the support groups and the tables you'll see in front here. We have a new way of letting people sit together. Last year, 2 years ago, you remember in 2020 it was all virtual, so it's so thrilling to be here with all of you in person and then also online. But the support groups decided to be nice to sit together, so I want to acknowledge all the support groups for all you're doing. And then I want to acknowledge my mom. Mom Judy's here. She's my co-chair on the support group for the Northeast Nomads. 12 years ago, Mom was diagnosed. I didn't know anything about Parkinson's, but we know a lot more now. And we're going to continue on the journey with all of you and do the best we can to get through it. And we're going to find a cure. With me, come on. Going to find a cure. Going to find a cure. Going to find a cure. We're going to do it. Thank you all. I'd like to introduce Dr. Kathleen Poston. She's Associate Professor for Neurology and Neurological Sciences, and by courtesy, neurosurgery at Stanford University. Go Cardinal. Dr. Poston's research and clinical emphasis is to understand the motor and non-motor impairments such as dementia that develop in a patient with Parkinson's disease and other movement disorders. She holds joint appointments in movement disorders and memory disorders and is a founding member of the Stanford Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, a real strong partner for PANC. And she's a co-director of the Pacific Udall Center, which is a National Institute of Health funded Parkinson's Disease Research Center of Excellence. All that is to say, she's really smart, she's really capable, and she knows a lot about Parkinson's. So let's welcome her this morning. Welcome, Dr. Poston. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, so I have to say this is the first time I've done an in-person talk in over a year and a half, so thank you all so much for having me here and for being here today. And for those of you who can't be here in person, I'm glad you could join remotely, and I hope that as we go through this morning, you all learn a lot of different things about Parkinson's disease and about your own care. I just told the organizers that I'm happy to share my slides. I know I have a bunch of content on there that might be a little bit hard to digest, just seeing the slides. My intent was not for you all to understand everything that I say here today, but to give you information. And so, please do know that I will make sure that these are shared. Okay, so these are just some of my funding sources, just to know that none of those are directly associated with what I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so my topic today was the prodrome of Parkinson's disease. To understand what that means, you have to understand what we as clinicians and researchers use to define Parkinson's disease, because the prodrome is what happens before that definition of when we say, we believe this person has Parkinson's disease. And so the way it's defined is that people with Parkinson's disease have to have this motor symptom of bradykinesia, or slowness, and either stiffness in their muscles or tremor. Those are the three motor symptoms that are used to define the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the stuff that happens potentially before that slowness, stiffness, and tremor happens. Okay, so when Parkinson's disease was first defined in 1817 by James Parkinson's, they talked about the motor syndrome and that definition. But since then, we've really come to understand that there are all of these non-motor symptoms associated with Parkinson's disease. And I don't need to tell this crowd, you've all experienced a lot of these. And so, as we've come to think about Parkinson's disease over the last 10 years, we've come to realize that there's this beginning understanding that there's this prodromal window. There's this stuff that happens that patients experience that they tell us about before that slowness and stiffness and tremor happens. It's not in everybody. Some people, the tremor is hands down the first thing that happens to them without question. But in a lot of other people, they do notice other things beforehand. And so these non-motor features likely represent this prodrome time. And pathologically, when we have information from patients who have donated their brain to research, we've noticed that there are regions of the brain that were probably affected very, very early in Parkinson's disease, before the motor symptoms started, that are associated with this prodrome. So this is just to show a picture of the brain and the way that we talk about the staging of the motor symptoms as Parkinson's disease progresses. And the really dark regions of the brain, those are the parts of the brain that are affected first, we think, in Parkinson's disease. And it's actually not until the sort of more middle red areas when we start to notice the motor symptoms. And so we have a good pathological basis to believe that things might be happening in the brain before somebody experiences that slowness and stiffness based on these pathology studies. And these are called Braak staging. This is the pathological staging of Parkinson's disease by a pathologist named Braak. So let's talk about what do I mean when I say these non-motor symptoms. So this is a common non-motor symptoms that happen in Parkinson's disease patients. Now, an important thing is that not all of these happen to all patients. Some do, some don't. So just because you see this list doesn't mean this is going to happen to you or your loved one. But these are things we sometimes hear about. The ones in orange are the ones that either can happen really early in Parkinson's disease or sometimes can happen before, during that prodromal time. The ones in gray are the ones that tend to happen after somebody's given the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. I'm going to focus on two of them here, the REM sleep behavior disorder and loss of smell. And the reason I'm going to focus on those two is because those two tend to be the most specific to Parkinson's disease. So for instance, constipation, while that happens to a lot of patients before the first symptoms, that's actually a really common thing, broadly speaking, for a lot of people as they get older. Whereas the sleep disorder and the loss of smell tend to be a little more specific to Parkinson's disease, so we tend to focus on those two. This is just to show that over the last couple of years, there have been some real efforts in the research community to give a formal definition of this time period before the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. And these are just the three major papers that have come out that talk about how do we define this, how do we think about this. This is just to show you, this is a bit of a work in progress, okay? We're continuing to update our understanding of this prodromal time. So what I tell you today might change in the next year. If you invite me back next year, I might have new information for you that we've been learning about this. So how is the prodrome studied, right? How do we study patients before they're diagnosed? It's tough. It's not an easy thing to do. So the most generalizable way is you take very large groups of people and you follow them over time and you see who develops Parkinson's disease. But since Parkinson's disease is about 2% of a lifetime prevalence, you'd have to have like hundreds of thousands of people that you're following regularly to catch the people who progress into Parkinson's disease. But there is one study that actually did do this, the Honolulu Asian aging study, where they took very large numbers of individuals in Hawaii and did follow them every year with motor testing, with cognitive testing. This was actually focused on, I think initially on cardiac risk factors, but they studied a lot of brain things too. And then they continued to follow these people until they passed away, and when they died, they donated their brain to research, and we could see which of those people progressed into Parkinson's disease. But that's a really tough, decades and decades long study to do. We want to do this a little more efficiently. So there are three groups of patients that we hone in on when we want to understand what happens before the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. Again, people who have that smell loss, we call that olfactory loss, and I'm going to tell you about this PARS study that was done. There's the study of patients with isolated REM sleep behavior disorder. I'm going to tell you about that one. And then people who have a strong family history of Parkinson's disease, who might be at a higher risk because of their genetics. So the problem with this is that each of these tends to be looking at the elephant from a different vantage point, right? So this is an old fable where, you know, where blind wise men are looking at an elephant, and the one who's touching the ear says, "Oh, it must be a fan," and the one that's touching its tail says, "Nope, it must be a rope." You know, and so depending on the way you're looking at something will bias the way you think about it. And so just to understand, when we look at this prodrome and we look at patients with a strong family history, we might not be looking at the prodrome of all Parkinson's patients, but maybe just the prodrome of patients with a genetic cause of Parkinson's disease. So that's where the bias comes in. So just important to understand that the way we look at these things can sometimes bias our understanding of them. So the first study that was done was this Parkinson's at-risk syndrome study, the PARS study. This was done by some of my colleagues at University of Pennsylvania. And what they did is they sent out these smell tests. Some of you guys might have taken these smell tests. They're kind of these scratch and sniffs, and they look for smell loss in older adults. And they sent out, I think you can see the numbers on there. My vision isn't quite good enough to see it on there. But it was like 10,000 or 20,000 people out in the community where they sent these scratch and sniffs to. And then patients sent them back, and then anyone who had lower than what was expected for age on their scratch and sniff test, they then invited them to come in and get a brain scan done to see if they had evidence of risk for Parkinson's disease. And so they started, with these 10,000 people, and they got down to a couple hundred who agreed to come in and get these brain scans done. And of them, there were a couple hundred, that had this abnormal finding on the brain scan called a dopamine deficit that showed that they might be at risk for Parkinson's disease. And this is just the groups of the people that were found in that study. So they invited them to come in and get this dopamine scan done. And what is that dopamine scan? So essentially, the part of the brain you're seeing on your left is a section through the brain of people who have donated their brain to research that goes through the dopamine-containing cells. So the dopamine-containing cells are that black smear, that really dark black area of the brain. And in Parkinson's disease, those dopamine-containing cells are lost, and so you don't have as dark of a section that's called the substantia nigra. We can actually look at how that dopamine distributes itself throughout the brain on a brain scan called a DAT scan. This is one of the ways that we look for people who are at risk for Parkinson's disease. Now, this scan does not definitively diagnose someone with Parkinson's disease. In fact, this scan can be abnormal for other reasons other than Parkinson's disease. So sometimes we use it clinically, sometimes we don't. It's not required for the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. But in someone who doesn't have Parkinson's disease but is at risk, this is a good way for us to see, is there something a little bit abnormal with their dopamine system that they're not even noticing yet, that they don't have any slowness, they have no tremor, they have no stiffness, but we notice a little bit of something abnormal on their dopamine scan. And so in looking at this, they found the patients who had smell loss and had abnormalities on their dopamine scan. And sure enough, they found that if you tested them really, really closely, they found these other things that were problematic, that people were having trouble with. Some slowness, some mild changes that could be found on exam, showing that this is actually a really potentially good way of identifying people at risk for Parkinson's disease, this combination of a smell loss plus having this dopamine deficiency. And then they looked at them over 4 years and found that a good number of these people did actually progress to develop Parkinson's disease. Not all of them, but a good number of them did over the next 4 years. And so this was, while they had to screen tens of thousands of patients to get there, they were able to find people who were at risk for developing Parkinson's disease. So this was a pretty effective way of finding the prodrome. What they noticed in particular, though, is that those folks who converted to Parkinson's disease over those 4-year time, almost all of them had these sleep problems before they were diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And that has led to us looking at this sleep disorder as one of the key prodromes. So what is REM sleep behavior disorder, or RBD? RBD is characterized by dream enactment behaviors that occur during the phase of sleep called REM sleep. So REM sleep is the deepest phase of sleep when you have your dreams. Normally, your body is actually paralyzed during that phase when you're having your dreams, and you don't move at all, but your eyes move, and so that's where you get the REM, the rapid eye movement. So the eyes can move, but nothing else can. In certain individuals, they lose that paralysis, and they actually act out and move during their dreams. Now, one of the most common causes of this is actually a lot of medications. There are certain medications that make you lose that paralysis during sleep, and you can act them out. So we call it isolated RBD if it's in somebody who doesn't have any of those other causes. They're not on any medications, they don't have severe obstructive sleep apnea, or these other causes of REM sleep behavior disorder. There's nothing else we can think of that causes it except for potentially this prodrome of Parkinson's disease. And what we found is that as people with this REM sleep behavior disorder are followed over time, most of them do end up developing either Parkinson's disease or the very closely related dementia with Lewy bodies, or another much rarer disorder called multiple system atrophy. But it can happen 20 years after they start having that REM sleep behavior disorder. Sometimes it's 5 years, sometimes it's 10 years, sometimes it's 20 years. It can be literally decades before the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease when they develop this REM sleep behavior disorder. So we're trying to understand this better. Is this a potential window of opportunity for us to intervene and maybe prevent Parkinson's disease? Does this tell us something about how Parkinson's disease develops? This is a really important area of research right now. So we think about this idiopathic REM sleep behavior disorder is probably one of the best ways to study what happens in the brain before people develop Parkinson's disease. But again, time is the big question. So how much time does it take between the development of REM sleep behavior disorder and Parkinson's disease? And then if somebody has REM sleep behavior disorder, will they develop this super rare syndrome, multiple system atrophy? Will they develop Parkinson's disease? Or will they develop more of a cognitive dementia syndrome called dementia with Lewy bodies? We don't have these answers yet. This is a big area of research right now. So the reason why I mentioned those three disorders is that Parkinson's disease has a lot in common with multiple system atrophy and dementia with Lewy bodies, in that all three of them have a motor component, all three of them can have memory or thinking problems, and all three of them can have changes in blood pressure that we call autonomic dysfunction, changes in urinary symptoms. All of those are controlled by the autonomic nervous system. But they are very distinct, can be very distinct disorders depending on which is more prominent. In Parkinson's disease, again, it's defined by the motor symptoms, sometimes with, sometimes without the autonomic dysfunction or the memory and thinking problems. But that's where the overlap comes in place. And again, when we think about the difference between Parkinson's disease and that closely related dementia with Lewy bodies, it's really about which symptoms are dominant and which ones come first. People who start off with really severe memory problems and then develop some of the movement problems, oftentimes those get categorized as this slightly different dementia with Lewy bodies, whereas Parkinson's patients can go years and years and years and decades without having any memory problems at all. So that's sort of how we think about the balance between these two things. Okay, there we go. So this is a long list that I have no intention of you to actually be able to read, but these are all the different genes that have been identified as being potentially putting people at risk for Parkinson's disease. Of this list, there are really only 2 genes that are common. If you look, there's a certain row there that has the frequency, and I've highlighted there in black the only 2 that have the word common. All the other ones say rare or extremely rare. Some of these have literally only been found in a single family, like one family that has, 6 people over the last 50 years who have had Parkinson's disease, but that gene has never been replicated outside of that. So some of these are super, super rare. But there are 2 that are more common, and those are the 2 that are highlighted. Those are the LRRK2 gene and the GBA gene. Now, if people have these genetic changes in these 2 genes, they don't 100% get Parkinson's disease. Some people do, some people don't. It's just an increased risk factor for getting Parkinson's disease. It's like if you eat really high-fat food your entire life. It's not a guarantee that you're going to have a heart attack, but it definitely increases your risk for having a heart attack. Or if you have high cholesterol, that's a risk, right? So it's not a guarantee, it's a risk. These two genes are risk genes. But it gives us the opportunity to study people who don't have Parkinson's disease but are at risk. So let's talk about these two genes really quickly. So the GBA gene mutation. So people who have this gene abnormality but do not have Parkinson's disease, we call that non-manifesting, meaning that they have a gene abnormality but they have zero symptoms when very closely looked at. Sometimes they can have a little bit of that REM sleep behavior disorder. Some of them are found to have more smell loss than other people of their age, a little bit more constipation. Sometimes they can even have some very mild cognitive changes compared to people their age. So we think that this could represent a prodrome of Parkinson's disease. We don't know for sure. There's a big cohort of these patients with this gene risk that are being followed regularly as part of a big study, this Parkinson's progression study that's funded by the Michael J. Fox Foundation, that are trying to understand the relationship between this gene and the onset of Parkinson's disease. Similarly, there's a big group of people that we're following for research who have this LRRK2 mutation who do not have Parkinson's disease. And when you look really, really closely, sometimes we can find some subtle gait changes, sometimes some sleep changes, especially when you really stress people when they're walking. We call that dual tasking, where we ask you to walk and do math at the same time and see if you can walk in a straight line, something I would probably have difficulty doing, especially without my second cup of coffee. So, we look at those kinds of things. But again, we still don't know how to predict who will develop Parkinson's disease or when they will develop Parkinson's disease. Those are still the two big outstanding questions when we think about this prodrome. These are people at risk, but who and when we still need to figure out. So I mentioned this PPMI study. This is a study that is, again, funded by the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And again, in my disclosures, I am on the executive steering committee for this study, so I know a lot about it. We're very lucky here in Northern California that actually UCSF is one of the recruiting sites for PPMI, if anybody's interested in being part of this study. So I do recruit for my colleagues who are north of me up at UCSF. They're very good friends. And so this PPMI study is this multi-center, multi-continent study that basically is looking at people who are newly diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and not yet on any medications, or this prodromal cohort, people with smell loss, people with REM sleep behavior disorder, with and without those dopamine scan abnormalities, genetic patients, patients with the LRRK2 and GBA mutations who do and do not have Parkinson's, and following them annually. We are actively enrolling if anybody wants to learn more about it. But the purpose of this is really to very systematically learn more about this prodromal phase. And why do we care? What's the practical use? What does this matter not just to the next generation, but how does this matter to actually people living with Parkinson's disease today? Well, it turns out that as we study the entire cycle of what happens in the brain of Parkinson's disease, it helps us to understand as scientists what are the different places that we can intervene and help patients. And so by studying these really, really early pre-diagnosis patients, we can understand parts of the brain that might be affected in Parkinson's disease before the slowness and the stiffness happen. And this can actually help us come up with better treatments for people who have the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease today, because it gives us a totally different view into what is Parkinson's disease. And that's why this phase of the disease is really, really important as scientists for us to study. In addition, this could also give us an opportunity to intervene for the next generation of people before they even develop Parkinson's disease. But I also think that this is something that we need to understand, because these symptoms that I'm describing are not, they're not benign. I think a lot of my patients with Parkinson's disease can think back to that time before they were diagnosed and say, I knew something was different, something was wrong. Those sleep problems were not inconsequential. The anxiety I was experiencing was not inconsequential. things like that. And so I think that it's really important for us to understand that prodromal phase, because those might be patients that we as clinicians are not actually treating at all because they don't formally have that definition of Parkinson's disease. And so from a treatment perspective, from developing new therapies for patients today, this is a really important area. And most importantly, when we think about discovery of new things, this is one of the most important things for us to look at. So that was my final science slide. I know I threw a lot at you guys really early in the morning. As I mentioned, my slides I will make them available for anybody who wants to read them in a little bit more depth. This is my Movement Disorder Center at Stanford. And again, if anybody wants to learn more about the PPMI study, myself or the other folks involved here all know about it, and it is actively recruiting. So we'd be more than happy to have everyone involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Poston, for such a thought-provoking talk, really to understand the continuum of Parkinson's disease from its very beginning to when somebody gets diagnosed. So it's with great pleasure I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Jimmy Choi. So for those of you who don't know Jimmy is a patient with young onset Parkinson's. He was diagnosed when he was 27 years old, back in 2003. And at the time, he let himself go. At the time, he did nothing and really wasn't an active participant in his own healthcare. It wasn't until 2010 that he had an epiphany because he hit rock bottom. And he really vowed that he would actually take over control of his physical, mental, and emotional well-being living with Parkinson's. He decided to start doing running, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, full marathons, and for reasons I still don't quite understand, decided to join American Ninja Warrior. Not just once, but 4 times, and actually won it, living with Parkinson's disease. So he's here today to inspire us on how we can live better, how we can change course, and how we can all together work towards a better cure for Parkinson's disease. Jimmy?
Just like everything in the 70s, I was made in Taiwan. My family immigrated to the United States when I was 10 years old. We moved to Bolingbrook, Illinois. I was very active in high school. I played multiple sports. I played baseball, I wrestled, and I was captain of the football team. I met Cheryl in high school, and we got married in the year 2000. We have 2 kids, Mason and Karina. Life for us was just beginning. I mean, we had very ambitious career goals. I was very active. I played a lot of golf. Really, we were just getting into the groove of being adults. And then I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's at the age of 27. 4 times what is 28?
7.
That's right. There you go. Nice. Mason, his smile can brighten up any room. Now Karina, she's a chip off the old block. She loves obstacle course racing, and for fun we watch American Ninja Warrior. Karina really got into the show, and every time the show comes on, she would say, "Dad, you should really try out. You should try to get on the show." I applied to make Karina happy. American Ninja Warrior actually called me, and they told me, "Hey, guess what? You've been selected to be a participant."
Jimmy Choi. He's a 41-year-old rookie who's also back.
Being on American Ninja Warrior is the most terrifying thing I've ever done, but it proved that I can follow my dreams and nothing can stop me.
Jimmy's story is an extreme example of the way the community is galvanized. He literally, everyone can't do what he did. I can't do it. But one reasonable answer to it is to get engaged in the community, get engaged in the fight, get engaged in research, get engaged in clinical trials. It's part of a call to involvement. And involvement has its own rewards.
I've learned there are positives and negatives to Parkinson's. People have said to me all the time, hey Jimmy, you ran a marathon in 3 hours and 40 minutes. Can you imagine how fast you'd be without Parkinson's? And I said, I don't think I'd be running a marathon if I didn't have Parkinson's.
My hands on myself. Pick up dust and more, put them back up on the shelf. Just a little baby girl isn't me. Am I coming out of left field? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. I'll be over and now, gonna feel it still.
From Bolingbrook, Illinois, this is Jimmy Choi. He's running tonight for Team Fox. There's his wife and daughter, Karina, who got Jimmy to come out for this. You can see the trimmers in those hands. There he goes. Oh, Jimmy Choi. Woo! Nice grab.
Giving to that easy living, goodbye to my hopes and dreams. Stop flipping for my enemies. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. I'll be over now, I can feel it still. Not I had your fill, I can feel it still.
All right, good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. How are you guys doing? Oh my goodness. Thank you guys. We are back. We are in person. I'm seeing faces out here, and I know there's still a couple hundred of you guys out in the virtual world. I want to say hi. You know, during this crazy times of COVID-19, I got used to doing a lot of these presentations over Zoom, right? Over cameras, sitting in front of computers. When I was getting ready today to come to the convention center, I was walking out the door and my wife says, whoa. What are you doing? I'm like, we're getting ready to leave, right? She goes, you didn't put on any pants. Put on some pants. So one of the things when it comes to presenting in front of a computer is that sometimes I'm actually sitting there without any pants on, right? You guys just don't see it. Now, I know for those of you sitting at home, right? When I get up the stage, I get a little nervous, and I used to just imagine people in their underwear in the audience. But for some of you at home, you guys are actually probably in your underwear. So that's all right. I want to thank the PANC for the opportunity for allowing me to come up here and share my story with you. It is always an honor. It is always a privilege for me to do that. Of course, all the sponsors, the board of directors, the committee, everybody that put any amount of effort in putting this event together. Another big round of applause. Once again, everybody, my name is Jimmy Choi, and I'm 46 years old today, but I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's 18 years ago at the age of 27. All right, I'm gonna stop right there. Think about this, 18 years. All right, it's hard to believe that my diagnosis of Parkinson's is a legal adult, okay? And every time I come up on stage and I sit in a room full of people in our community, the Parkinson's community, usually I am one of the younger people in the room, all right? So they're like, oh, you know, everything that you saw me doing on the video, oh, Jimmy, you can do that because you're young, right? I'm like, well, yeah, maybe. But let's think about this, okay? Just give me a show of hands. I just want to see a show of hands. Everybody that has Parkinson's in this room, raise your hand. All right, good. Keep your hands up if you have been diagnosed for more than 5 years. Keep your hands up if you're more than 5 years, okay? Let's go 7 years. All right, let's go 10 years. Let's go 15. Let's go 17. 18? Anybody? 1, 2, just a handful. So 3 over there, just a handful. My point is, I might be one of the youngest people up here by age, but in reality, guys, I'm the senior in this room. when it comes to living with Parkinson's. Okay? So, back in 2007 when I was diagnosed, I thought I had everything figured out. Right? I was going to start a family, my wife, my kids. I was going to live a very normal life, right? But it wasn't until I was getting a insurance physical, because my dad said, Jimmy, when you start a family, you need to go out and buy yourself some life insurance. So it wasn't until an insurance physical when a nurse came to me and sat down and started asking me a lot of questions about the way that I moved. Now, she never said the word Parkinson's. She never gave me a diagnosis. All she said was, Jimmy, I am noticing some things about you because I do insurance physicals on the side, but in my day job, I work in a neurologist's office. And I'm seeing stuff about you that is very, very familiar. So that intrigued me, okay? And really what started was she noticed that there was very little movement in my eyes when it comes to tracking. So she thought it was drugs, alcohol. When we rule all that out, she had me stand up, she had me walk. She's like, okay, Jimmy, you need to talk to your general practitioner. So it piqued my interest and I started to go to visit after visit, specialist after specialist. A lot of you guys know what this feels like, right? Without getting any answers. And then finally, after months and months of doing these exams or tests that I can only describe as sobriety-like, right? I was finally told, Jimmy, you have Parkinson's, right? It was a clinical diagnosis, and what that means is it was observational, and it was supported through my positive reaction to taking medications. And then years later, I ended up taking 2 DAT scans, which you guys saw in some earlier slides. I ended up taking 2 DAT scans taken months apart that confirmed changes in my dopamine production, which confirmed my diagnosis. Now, to this point, I was so sure that nothing was wrong with me. In fact, I didn't even tell my wife when I was diagnosed. Not only until I decided that I wanted to take medication. Then I decided that I was going to tell my wife, okay? And I thought I can hide from it. Taking medication allowed me to live life normal, for now, so I thought I can hide from it. But as the years gone by, and I'm going to tell you guys this right now, the first 8 years when I was diagnosed, I did absolutely nothing about what I'm going to do and how I'm going to live with the disease. I thought taking that one pill was going to get me through for the rest of my life and I was going to be fine. But as time went on, the disease progression never stopped. And I started to feel all this extra burden, or this extra weight that was starting to build up in my body, right? And it became harder and harder and harder to hide. So over time, as these things built up, all of these symptoms started stacking on top of each other. And you know what? I brought my symptoms here to show you guys. A lot of you are familiar with this, but a lot of you out there may not be. So I'm going to go through this. I brought my symptoms here for you guys to see. All right, what do we have here? We've got balance issues, okay? That's one of the symptoms that I was experiencing early on. We have loss of cognitive function. Things were starting to get fuzzy at work. I wasn't thinking as clearly as before. By the way, for those of you who are counting, these are 6-pound weights, okay? Each, not total. Tremor, of course, right? Very classic. Everyone thinks tremors and associates that immediately with Parkinson's. We have gait issues. We have insomnia, difficulty sleeping. What else do we have? I always joke that if this was a Christmas party, I would be the worst Santa ever. Internal tremors, right? I already talked about tremors, but internal tremors. A lot of you know what I'm talking about here. I'm going to dig in a little bit into more of that a little bit later. Dystonia. For those of you who have never experienced dystonia, we all know what a Charlie horse is, right? We've experienced that. Lasts for maybe a minute, right? Goes away in maybe 10 seconds if you're lucky. Well, imagine that feeling, except it lasts for 40 minutes, an hour. All right, that's what dystonia feels like. What else do we have in here? We've got rigidity. A couple more. This one is really, really crappy, guys. Constipation. Right. And then finally, this is one of my favorite. This is a bigger one because it's really one of my favorite. It's dyskinesia. Right? Now, many of us know in this room that this isn't necessarily a symptom of Parkinson's. This is actually a side effect of the medication that we have to take. Right? So we have to choose. How do we want to move today? Uncontrollably shaking, or do we want to move uncontrollably but rhythmic? My wife always joked that, hey, you know what, it's like I'm slow jamming to myself. Now, I wanted to show you guys all of this because this is the burden that I was carrying around. And many of you in this room are carrying around similar burdens. And those of you who don't have Parkinson's, you're carrying around your different versions of your bag of weights, right? So one thing that I want you guys to take away from this is that everybody's bag of weights is going to be a little bit different, okay? So when you see somebody, take time to understand what they're carrying, okay? And then hopefully you guys can learn from each other. Now, carrying all this, okay, I was unable to smile. I was unable to play with my kids. I was unable to focus at work. I was 35 years old at the time. Remember, the first 8 years, I ignored it. I was carrying all this. I was unable to focus at work. But worst of all, I was unable to play with my kids, okay? And it's gotten to the point where I was so inactive that I began gaining weight, and I was 240 pounds, and I needed a cane to walk. Frustration would set in. Anger would set in. I was yelling and snapping at my family for no good reason, okay? Can you guys imagine me, 240 pounds at the time, standing over a 2-year-old little girl, my daughter, and just screaming off of the top of my lungs? I have those out-of-body experiences when these things happen, and I'm staring at myself. I'm like, Jimmy, stop. Stop. But there's just so much frustration and anger inside me that I couldn't stop myself. I'm just continuously yelling. Now, there had to be a breaking point, right? As if that wasn't bad enough, there had to be a breaking point. And that came in March of 2010. I actually hit rock bottom, and when I hit rock bottom, I was carrying my son, Mason, down the stairs. And I figured, you know what? I'm at home, I'm safe, I've got railings I can hang on to, I've got Mason in the other hand, I don't need my cane. Sure enough, the two of us tumbled down an entire flight of stairs, about 10 steps. Now, I hit the bottom of the stairs, and I looked up, and I saw the face on my wife and my daughter, because they witnessed it. Now, I kept him above my body the entire way down, so he was unhurt. Now, I, on the other hand, suffered bumps and bruises, but I'll tell you guys what, mentally, I will never be the same. I knew right then and there that I had to make a change, but I couldn't change the fact that I had Parkinson's, so what can I do? The next best thing is that I can change the way that I lived with it, okay? So I started to educate myself, finally learning this thing called Parkinson's. I was given a pamphlet or a booklet when I was first diagnosed. I never opened that pamphlet until 8 years later, until this moment, right? I started learning. Now, back then, this is when Google was still young, right? 2010, Google was still young, so I was still asking Jeeves or looking on Yahoo, right? These things are all ancient by now. But the more I learned, the more in control I felt. And there was an onslaught of information coming in, but they all had some consistent themes. The first one is exercise, exercise, exercise. You guys have been told this over and over again, right? Today, we know that high-intensity exercise is the only treatment proven to slow progression of Parkinson's. Number two, the second thing that I learned is that I am not alone. I don't have to do this on my own. There are others out there who are living with the disease, who are learning as they go, and they're doing these things on their own. And I can learn, all I have to do is reach out and I can learn from them, okay? Now, I knew I wasn't smart enough to find a cure for myself. And I know that I certainly wasn't rich enough or had the funds to fund a cure for myself. So what did I do? I did the very next best thing that I can do is I went out and I signed up for every single clinical trial that I could get my hands on. I didn't care if I didn't qualify. I was going to sign up anyways, right? Because that got me at least one thing. It got me information, so I can learn from it. And it got me information from experts who are doing the research. But I would get into as many clinical trials as I possibly can. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to talk about this, and I'll tell you guys, this is the state of mind at the time. If I happen to get into a clinical trial, it's very selfish. If I happen to get into a clinical trial and it was the cure, right, I'd be the first to get it, right? Very selfish way of thinking. And then also, another selfish way of thinking is that if I happen to get into a clinical trial that was risky, involved procedures, surgeries, taking, basically being the lab rat, right? And it took my life. That wouldn't have been such a bad thing, right? At least not for me at that time, because that was not the life that I intended to lead, nor was it the life that I wanted to live at that time. But by doing this, I was gathering all this information. So what did I do with all this information? I started to exercise. I walked around the block with my family, with my cane, and then when I felt more comfortable, I left my cane at home and walked around the block without it. And then as I got more and more comfortable, I just started to add a little bit more. Maybe 1 block today, 2 blocks next week, 3 blocks the following week, and I started to jog. And then I started to run. Then one day, I was getting ready for a business trip. I sat on a plane, sat down. In the seat back pocket is a magazine, and that's a Runner's World magazine. Okay, just there right in front of me in my seat. I picked it up. There happened to be an article in there about a person running their very first marathon while being diagnosed with Parkinson's. Okay, that inspired me so much. I was like, you know what, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to run. But not a marathon, it's too much. But I decided I was going to run more. But by April of 2012, I reached my first goal of running my first 5K, right? But after I got done, that wasn't good enough. I pushed that goal out just a little bit more. I wanted to run a 10K, and I did that by May. And then I wanted to do more. I wanted to do 15K, and I did that by June. And then I wanted to do more. I wanted to do a half marathon, and I did that by September. As soon as I crossed the finish line, I decided that I was going to run the Chicago Marathon in 2012, and it was going to be my first marathon. And who knew that running was so popular that 40,000 people would sign up and pay $300 to run a marathon? That's crazy to me, right? But that race was sold out. I couldn't get in, and I was devastated. But then somebody said, Jimmy, you can still run for charity. I was like, that's a great idea. But all the charities I called at the time were running out of bibs. We don't have any, you're too close to the race. So I was like, you know what? I found the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and I'm saying, I'm just going to call them. Never hurts to ask. And they told me, Jimmy, we've got 1 bib left, right? We got 1 bib left. And to this day, guys, that 1 bib, I've always felt that it was there for me. Now, they said, you got to raise $2,000, though, if you want this bib. And I had a month to do it, 1 month to do it. So I accepted, and I committed to raising this money in 2000. Now, what happens when you guys have to raise money? Where do you guys go? Friends and family, right? Hey, what's up? I haven't seen you in 10 months, but can you give me some money? So I finally, in order for me to start raising money in 1 month's time, I had to start finally opening up, okay? And I'm going to set the scene for you guys. And you guys we'll get a familiar feeling about this. We go to my friends and family at Christmas events or at family gatherings, right? There's always that awkward moment, that Parkinson's elephant in the room, right? We see somebody you haven't seen for 10 months, and they're like, hey, how's it going, Jimmy? Now, they don't really want to know how it's going, right? And you don't really want to tell them how it's going. So, how's it going, Jimmy? Just sitting there staring at you, and you're thinking, well, I'm thinking, do I really want to tell them, or forget it? Forget it, let's just get right past this. I'm fine. And then we stare at each other for the next 10 to 15 seconds in awkward silence. And then you turn away and you walk your separate ways. Now you guys can see how over time you're actually creating separation with your friends and family. These people who are going to be closest to you, you're creating separation. So by telling my story, I'm telling them why I'm running a marathon, why I'm raising money, how exercise is helping me with my medication. how to time my medication, how exercise is helping me lessen the amount of medication that I need to take. I'm telling them why I'm doing it, how I'm helping myself while asking them for their donations, and then how I'm trying to help others as well. So at these gatherings, I stopped feeling like an outsider. I stopped feeling like the Spider-Man in a room full of Batmans, right? I needed them to listen because they were apprehensive because I was apprehensive. And I had to share my story openly. Now, let's look at this. In 1 month's time, guys, I did it. I raised more than $2,000. I raised $5,000 actually for that first time. Let's pause, hold our horses, take a step back. In 1 month's time, raised $5,000 for research. I've integrated myself, or started to integrate myself into a community with other people with Parkinson's who are like me, who are like-minded, who have same goals, who I can learn from, who we can work with each other, right? In 1 month's time, I've done more good for myself, for my family, for the Parkinson's community than my first 8 years combined. That was a mind-blowing moment for me, right? This became my daily thought, okay? What can I do to make today better? What am I going to do to make this better? Even if it's just to take one more step when I'm out there running or walking. Even if it's just to make one more rep when I'm working out in the gym. What am I doing today that is making me better than yesterday? Now, since 2012, guys, I have kept up with these one mores, okay? And these one mores have led to some pretty amazing accomplishments. I continue to push myself with these one mores until I became unstoppable. Between 2012 and 2015, I continued to run, and I accumulated over 5,500 miles running during that time. And I was also very fortunate enough and honored to be able to share in a 50-mile challenge and running with 5 other people with Parkinson's in upstate New York. In 2016, I was unstoppable. I joined our friends over at the Davis Finney Foundation, and I rode in a cycling event that took me 100 miles, but I became the first person with Parkinson's on record to complete that 100 miles in under 5 hours. Thank you. So that's holding 20 miles per hour average on a bike over 5 hours. Most of us don't do that in a car. In 2017, I was unstoppable. That was my first time on American Ninja Warrior. And I was given a stage. I was able to start sharing my story more on a national stage. In 2018, I was unstoppable. When I returned to American Ninja Warrior, but also finished 4th in my age group, a couple hours away at Tahoe at the Spartan World Championships. Okay, so we were climbing mountains, we were climbing obstacles. We ran over 13 miles, and I finished 4th in my age group in that race. In 2019, I was unstoppable as I returned to American Ninja Warrior again for the 3rd time. And I also completed the Chicago Marathon that year while doing 351 burpees along the route, okay? If you guys don't know what a burpee is, I'm gonna get into that a little bit later. But for every mile marker, whatever number was on that mile marker was the number of burpees that I have to do. So I stopped, did those burpees, and continued running. In 2020, even with COVID, I was unstoppable. Competing my 4th year as an American Ninja Warrior, and I also, during that time, broke 2 Guinness World Records for fitness. Number 1 was for a chest-to-ground hand-release burpee, and number 2 for a lateral plyometric push-up in 1 minute. Thank you. Today, I am unstoppable. This year, I competed in my 5th and final season on American Ninja Warrior. Now, I can't tell you guys what happened because you guys haven't seen it yet. But you guys will see it, hopefully before next June. Whenever they decide to air it, you guys will see it, and I'm excited for you guys to see that one. But stay tuned for that. But all in all, guys, this is gonna sound really show-offy, even though I just showed off. I've done 1 ultramarathon. I've done 16 marathons. I've competed on American Ninja Warrior 5 times. I've have 2 Guinness World Records. I have done 105 half marathons, countless 5Ks, 10Ks, triathlons. Now, all these physical accomplishments are great, guys, but I'll tell you what, since 2012, my most my most proud accomplishment is that my wife and I have helped raise almost $600,000 for Parkinson's research. Now that's a far cry from the 2010 cane-wielding 240-pound Jimmy, right? Now, if it weren't for these things that I learned along the way, it wouldn't be easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it wouldn't be as easy as I might make it seem today if it weren't for these things that are along the way. Because life certainly has a way of throwing obstacles in your way, right? So, you guys remember these things? Right? I mean, I think just about everybody in this room would remember these things. This is a phone book. I always joke with my kids that this is the Google of the 1900s, right? Now, if I were to tell you that this was going to be an obstacle in your way, and you need to get to the other side to get to your goal, your prize, or whatever it is, and the only way to get through it is to rip this thing in half, you would think that's pretty impossible, right? No way can I do it. So you would get it? I'm not going to do that. Yeah. Instead, adopt that one more each day mentality, right? Today, I'm going to start with just the cover. 1 page at a time. 2 pages the next day. 3 pages, and so on. Every day, you're going to do a little bit more each day, and you want to do it at a pace that is safe for you and doing things that you're going to enjoy, okay? And I'll tell you what, as I train my way through these one mores, there's something that I learned, and I want to share this with you guys. When I ran a Chicago Marathon in 2015, in the video I said I ran the marathon, my fastest marathon in 3 hours and 40 minutes. And that was in 2015. I was so proud of myself. 3 hours and 40 minutes, are you crazy? But then the winner of the marathon came up to me at a charity event at the end. And he's like, hey, congratulations, how did you do? Now I felt silly because this guy just ran the same course in 2 hours and 15 minutes, right? So I felt silly, and I'm like, I did fine, I guess, I finished, yay, 3 hours and 40 minutes. And he was like, that's amazing, I couldn't do that. I'm like, what? You're crazy, because you just ran it in 2 hours and 15 minutes. He says, well, that's true, Jimmy. I might be able to run the same distance in faster time than you, but we cover the same distance, right? But if you want me to continue running like you did for another 2 hours and change, and you asked me to run at my highest pace and for 3 hours and 40 minutes, I couldn't do it, he said. I couldn't do it. He says, by that definition, you are more fit than I am. And I realized at that point, guys, that I should never compare myself to anybody else except myself, okay? I don't expect any of you guys to go out there and get on American Ninja Warrior. Actually, I do expect one guy in here. We'll talk about, you guys will learn about him later probably. But I do expect one guy, but I don't expect everybody to do it. But I want you guys to find what is right for you, what you enjoy doing, and keep doing it. As you can see, by working on your more each days, guys, it is possible to get through an entire phone book and get to your goal just by doing a little bit more each day. Now you work on these. Here. Now you work on these, you're never really going to know your limit until you get to your limit, okay? Maybe your limit is 40 pages. Maybe your limit is 50 pages. Maybe your limit is 37 pages. Maybe your limit out there is 115 pages, right? But you're never going to know what that limit is until you keep going until you can't do it anymore. And then maybe one day, 975 pages could be possible in one shot. My wife hates it. I like to make a mess on the floor. Now, I want you guys to see that what I thought was once impossible is possible. Okay? And then my new mantra now is that nothing is impossible. As long as I am willing to put in the time and the effort, as long as I believe that something can be done, that I'm the only one that has control over how much effort that I put in. So instead of things being impossible, I look for how to make things possible, right? That consistent mental thought that I am possible, just like you are possible. Now remember these symptoms? As I trained along through my route, I've learned how fitness, functional movement can help me with every single one of these, okay? I'm gonna start with dyskinesia. As we know, this is more likely brought on by the side effects of the medication that we take, right? But by being a better management of my medication, I'm able to take less, which lessens the risk and onset of dyskinesia. Dystonia, those cramps. By making yourself stronger, making your body, especially those counter muscles, right? I tend to get these cramps right here in my neck. So what I'm doing is now I'm making my backside stronger so I can pull myself out of that cramp and hold it for as long as I can. Rigidity, that slow movement, that tightness, okay? Once again, by strengthening your entire body, you're able, and also working on those fast twitch muscles, you're able to move just a little bit quicker. Constipation. Fitness is nothing without nutrition. So I had to change the way that I eat. I haven't talked about that a lot, but nutrition is key. Change the way that I eat, which also helps with constipation. Insomnia. Let's think about this. If I'm constantly working out, and I hit the gym 4 hours a day, and I'm running 3 to 8 miles a day, I'm gonna be pretty tired. Insomnia becomes less of a problem. These gait issues, right? When I work out, I use full range of motion. I concentrate more and more on my form versus just getting through the workout. It's gonna help me improve my gait. And at the same time, it will also help me improve my balance, especially working with contralateral body movements, like staying balanced on one side, focusing on muscles on one side, and then giving that side a rest, focusing muscles on the other side. It's gonna help me improve my balance. Loss of cognitive functions, right? We know that high intensity exercise releases all kinds of good juices in your brain. I'm not a scientist, I'm not gonna be able to explain all that, but it releases all these other chemicals in your brain that's gonna help you focus, help you think a little bit better. Tremors and internal tremors, right? By strengthening your arm, being always constantly in motion, okay? I have resting tremors. But when I'm engaged, my muscle, my tremors lessen when I've engaged that muscle, okay? So I'm always constantly grabbing things and holding on to them. Internal tremors is it's a little bit harder, but at the same time, again, when you're constantly in motion, okay, you're gonna feel less of that. So all these things that I carry around, I started to work out and started to continue to train with all of these symptoms and all of this burden. If any of you put these things on, okay, especially for those of you who don't have Parkinson's, you're not gonna think about making dinner for your kids. You're not gonna think about finishing that report at work. You're not gonna be thinking about going out for a walk, because all you're thinking about is, oh my God, I've got all this weight on my back, and I don't wanna do anything except sit down and put this down. But if you start to work with your symptoms, instead of against them, instead of using them as excuses not to do things, use them as excuses to do things, okay? I can't move as well because of X, Y, Z. What can I do for myself that makes X, Y, Z better? So now I can stop thinking about all this weight. Okay, I'm carrying this, but I still need to get done what I need to get done. So if I go to the gym and I'm still carrying all this burden, it's all right. I'm gonna get down and I'm gonna do push-ups, okay? But that's okay. I'm gonna do clapping push-ups. And if we want, we do some burpees as well, okay? But one thing that I do wanna say, guys, is that know your limits. Be safe. I know that if I stand up too quickly right now, orthostatic hypotension is gonna take over, and I'm just gonna flop right down, right? So I'm just gonna take my time. I'm gonna stay down here for another second or two, because I really wanna finish my talk without fainting. All right, we're good. Thank you. Guys, I have to be honest. The stronger I got, symptoms never necessarily gone away, okay? Instead, what I'm doing now is giving my body a better chance of handling them. So I can take what Parkinson's might throw at me next, okay? But you know what? In order for me to maintain and stay ahead of the disease, I have to keep doing what people would consider as a crazy amount of exercise, right? But I'll tell you what, it's something that works for me, and it's something that's giving me the ability to combat Parkinson's. And I couldn't do it if I didn't find motivation, right? But that's not enough, because we're not gonna find motivation every day, okay? You're not gonna have that bear chasing you guys every day, which is where you also need discipline. On those days when you just don't feel like moving, you gotta be disciplined. I work out every day at 5:30 in the morning. I'm gonna get up today at 5:30 in the morning and get my butt to the gym because I'm disciplined to do that. And sometimes motivation, discipline isn't enough. You have to face your determination, right? I am determined to stay ahead of Parkinson's. I am determined to fight in the battle. Just when I think I'm just too damn tired to move, and I've told myself that quitting is the best option, determination is what I go to. Now, since 2012, I've used motivation, discipline, and determination, right? Stay committed to the fight. The reason I do that is because everything comes full circle in 2015. Remember that Runner's World magazine I talked about? In 2015, Runner's World did an article about me running the New York City Marathon. And again, in 2019, when I did those burpees and ran the Chicago Marathon. So hopefully this will inspire someone else to move, inspire them to get up. Now, I can't stop what I'm doing because Parkinson's doesn't stop. Medicine, exercise helps, but it's never gonna go away, guys, at least not anytime soon. So I still hear things like, Jimmy, you don't look like a guy with Parkinson's, right? Can you imagine how much faster or stronger you'd be? You saw in the video, I said, I wouldn't be doing all this stuff if I didn't have Parkinson's. And even with COVID, guys, we all try to get back to the normal. But I challenge you, why can't we get back to better than normal, right? Just remember, living well isn't defined by how much money you have or what kind of car you drive. For me, living well is defined by what life throws at you and how you handle. In this case, for me, is how do I handle what Parkinson's has taken away from me? So when I train with a purpose. I already said that. I train with a purpose. What started as a desire to learn a life-saving skill, because I thought to myself, I was falling, hey, what can I do from a fitness perspective that is going to help me in case that I fall? And I'll tell you what, guys, it's a burpee, right? So I started adding burpees to my regimen. And I'm gonna show you guys my world record attempt in its entirety right now. And this is a burpee. The record was 28 going in 1 minute. And I had to beat 28. At this time, guys, I was contemplating my life choices. What the hell am I doing here? Muscle memory kicks in when we do repetitive tasks over and over again. So find opportunities despite what Parkinson's has given you.
Come on, Jimmy. Come on, Jimmy. You got it. Come on. Got it. Come on, Jimmy. You got it. Come on, Jimmy. Come on. Come on, Jimmy. 40. 15 class. Go.
Thank you. At the end of the day, guys, I did 30 in 1 minute. And I'll tell you what, it is because I started doing burpees as a desire to use fitness to help myself. Now, before I go, guys, I'm gonna leave you with this. Just remember that any given day, you guys are given options and choices, okay? So think what the choices that you make on a daily basis is going to define the path that you take. It could be simple and small, right? Like, do I eat that donut or do I reach for that piece of fruit? Think about that. Do I sit here on the couch today or do I go for a run? But for me, always create challenges for you despite living with Parkinson's. Always create challenges for yourself no matter what it is that you're dealing with in life, guys. There's a growing movement in people with Parkinson's, guys. And this whole community, there's a growing movement. All you have to do to join that movement is move. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Just so you guys know, I know there's a break coming up, but I'll be hanging out at the table over here. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer. And as Sean says, if you guys want to grab a photo, please stop me. Come on by. Always welcome. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. That was so inspiring, such a warrior attitude. And can we as a group actually just tell Jimmy how unstoppable we're going to be?
I love it. Thank you.
Now, when I was talking to Jimmy, you might remember this, Jimmy, that I asked you, so what do you need from us to come out here? What can we do for you? And your first response to me, and you tried to act like you were a diva, is that you said, I'd like you to pick me up from the airport, and I want a bag of M&Ms. Not just any M&Ms, yellow peanut M&Ms. I don't like any other color. So, as a token of our appreciation, Jimmy, we got you a bag of yellow M&Ms. We heard they're your favorite.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you. Will. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
All right, everyone, now we're on break for 15 minutes till 11:10, I believe. So please get up, stretch around, and be back in your seats at 11:10 so we can continue our presentation. Thank you very much. And thank you, Jimmy.